My brother Mont and Rudy Valentino were chums. They were the same as Bob Wagner and I and Shirley MacLaine are today, the same as Peirce was with Betty Davis, the same as Ern was with Jack Barrymore. They lived together. They were they were drinking buddies together. So it was sort of on a personal basis. Well, Rudolph Valentino and my brother Mont really hit it off. In fact, he changed Rudy's looks entirely. Instead of that patent leather greasy look, he made him a human being, the same as my father cut Douglas Fairbanks Sr., the old man, his hair. He cut his hair in bob form so that when the old man used to do these stunts and he would jump around, his hair then would fall back into place instead of falling in his face. There was quite a bit of discussion about how far a makeup should go. In other words, a true makeup, when you go into rubber prosthesis work and or such as a makeup as that.
Sorry, I didn't catch rubber.
Rubber prosthesis. That is where you take and you take a person's face and you completely change their bone structure. Such as if I was going to make you, let's say, George Washington. You were going to play the part of George. I would take a cast of your face. It would be modeled in clay exactly to look like George Washington. You take another cast. Now, then the cast of your face, after that clay is taken off, you put them back together. The rubber is shot into there. Now, those pieces that would have been modeled for you would go on your face. You'd be made up, and you'd look like George Washington. That is changing the construction of your face. That is rubber prosthesis work. But these are the things that the makeup artists really love to do, and the things that that really they should get the credit for that they haven't in the past.
Have you done any work like that?
Well, I've done quite a bit of work like that. There was some things where, if you'll remember a little picture that Shirley MacLaine, where we changed her into a Japanese geisha, a red-headed, freckle-faced little girl into an Oriental. It wasn't so much the makeup. It was wrestling her 2 out of 3 falls to get it on her. We made the whole motion picture in Japan, and the difficult part there for her was that in modeling these eyes and using the rubber pieces, as well as the corner pieces, as well as the tabs where you pull up the eye to make it Oriental, the thing we didn't take, and also you block out this eyebrow and you build another eyebrow here, because in the Oriental eye, this area here is very large.
The late Fritz Lang, the director that you worked with on Rancho Notorious, that's where you met Marlene Dietrich. I think several of your brothers had worked with her in earlier times.
She taught me many things. I can't say enough about how really sharp this woman is. She, of course, von Stroheim, she learned many things about the line down of her nose, the little silver line and the one little spotlight. Because, you see, in those days, even with Garbo...
You mean Steinberg?
Yes, von Steinberg. In those days, Gavin, the thing was in lighting, in camera work and that, they used extreme highlights and shadows. In other words, all they would do is maybe have just a spotlight going across the eyes, because this is all he wanted to see. He didn't want to see any of the rest of the face. She taught me a little trick. For instance, I was working on her one morning. She says, "Frank, darling, I'm going to show you something." And with that, while she was drinking her coffee, she took the coffee cup off and took the saucer and held it up. And she always lit her cigarettes with wooden matchsticks. So she lit the matchstick and she held it under the coffee cup, or the saucer. And she turned the saucer over, and there was the soot, or the carbon. And she reached over and took a little baby oil, and she mixed that baby oil in with that carbon, and she applied that for her eyeshadow and blended it on up into the frontal bone. And what it did, Gavin, is it framed an eye with the most natural look without being overly made up and everything, but it made the eyes sharp and everything. Things that she taught me, and as well as taught the boys in the earlier days, were some fantastic things. She was really a great gal. The thing that's most important in makeup today is the eyes mainly on an actress. Eyes, lipstick, after all, this is basically what you look at first, is the eyes. Now, you can go 2 ways. You can either overdo your eyes, such as Elizabeth Taylor did in the last Academy Award appearance. Here's a girl that had the most gorgeous set of eyes of any creature that I've ever looked at. And I saw her when she was 10 or 11 years old. She lived next door to my brother Wally. And why she would have to go to that lengths of putting all that junk on her eyes when she's got the prettiest eyes in the world, I'll never know. And then there are other women that need the help of eyeliner, of mascara, of eyelashes, of maybe a little bit of color to enhance their personality.
One of the things perhaps critics of Hollywood and Hollywood makeup and Hollywood styles have said over the years is that perhaps people like Elizabeth Taylor were encouraged to use too much makeup, that a style, a whole convention of makeup was developed that they didn't need. Maybe people like Elizabeth Taylor who didn't actually need any makeup, and other people as well.
No, that's not true. There was there was an awful lot of what happens with a lot of your actresses in Hollywood, and especially today, and it's happened with Shirley MacLaine the same way. When they started out and when they were younger, they listened to people that were professionals in their particular line of endeavor, such as Edith Head, people that did know what was going on. But then as they get successful and as they make $1 million a picture, now they know about everything. They know about the lighting. They know everything about the camera work. They know everything about clothes, about makeup, everything. You know, all of a sudden they won't listen to anybody, and consequently they go their merry way, and 9 times out of 10 it's wrong. That's all I can tell you.
Is it possible, though? I mean, I put the criticism to you. Is it possible that makeup men sometimes make mistakes and give people the wrong image?
Let us put it this way. If makeup man can only suggest, or hairstylist can only suggest, now, if the actor or actress doesn't want it or squawks to the producer or director, you know 9 times out of 10 the makeup man's not going to win out. I must say in the Westmore case that they pretty much did what the Westmores wanted them to, right on down the line, because, and I don't say this braggadociously, it was just a well-known fact that, for instance, Ronald Reagan, when he was a sportscaster in Des Moines, Iowa, when he came out, he actually had his hair parted down the center like that. I mean, he was really, Mortimer Snerd. Now, we could have left him that way, but how far do you think you'd have gone as a leading man, as Mortimer Snerd? He was he was one of the first actors that Peirce ever allowed not to wear makeup. And the strange thing was putting makeup on Ronnie Reagan made him look terrible, whereas leaving it off, he looked much better.
There was a very interesting quotation in the book that David Selznick makes. You quote, when they're talking about Rebecca and Joan Fontaine, he's criticizing, he sends a memo, I think it's to your brother Mont, about Joan Fontaine. It says, "What can I do to get you makeup men to throw away your kits and your tweezers? The public's so far ahead of you all, and so sick of your makeup that you're managing to contribute to the destruction of stars." Is there any justification in that at all?
Well, let us say about Mr. Selznick how far wrong he was, because Mr. Selznick used to sleep all day long, and he would work at night. Now, the crew shooting Gone with the Wind and/or Rebecca worked hours and hours during the day. I'm speaking of my brother Mont. He would get up at 4 in the morning, come home 9:30 at night. And this man had the gall to call my brother Mont at 3:30 in the morning and rant and rave about the phony eyelashes, on the leading actress, of why he put so... And my brother Mont just let him go on, and he said, "Mr. Selznick, that is her own eyelashes." And he said, "Well, cut them down and change, In other words, after he had been caught, so to speak, ranting and raving about something that...
Didn't exist.
That didn't exist, and there was really nothing you could do about it.
And talking about the great stars, of course, you worked with Spencer Tracy on The Mountain.
Spencer Tracy, he was something else. Now, it was fantastic to ever watch Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn work a scene out. Now, this is prior to going on film. The way those two worked together, hand in glove, and the things they did was really fascinating, even for a crew to watch them work it out. But as we all know, Spencer had, a little drinking problem, and so much so that there was one period or one time that he got a little too wild, and they locked him in a soundstage, actually locked the doors, and he really tore the joint apart. On The Mountain, we put him to bed a few nights under that condition, but that's nothing new. There's been a lot of actors and actresses that have gone through that, so it really isn't anything new.
Did he give you a bad time?
No, well, he did it the very first day. I, of course, went down from breakfast, and the director said, "Frank, I'd like you to meet Spencer Tracy," and he said...
Eddie Dmitrik.
Yeah, Eddie Dmitrik was the director, and Franz Planter was the cameraman, and they were sitting there, and Tracy looked at me, he says, "I don't like makeup. I don't like makeup men." And I said, "Well, Mr. Tracy, I'm here to do a job, and if you don't like it, I could..." Well, of course, there's a few words spoken that you can't say on television. And I told him what he could do with it, and turned on my heels, because I knew if I was going to go, I'd rather go now back to the States than to have to, go through 3 months of this nonsense. So I went in with A.C. Lyles, a buddy of mine, and had breakfast. And it really did take Tracy back some, because from then on, we got along just, I got makeup on him when we did everything we wanted to do, and we really became very, very good friends. So I think with Spencer Tracy, a lot of it, in his idea, was the best defense is an offense. And I think that's basically the way he operated. And then when somebody called his bluff, it was no longer any fun.
You did some complicated makeup on his hands, didn't you? Rope burns and so on.
Yes, where Bob Wagner supposedly slips and falls, and you see the line actually go through his hands, and it tears up the flesh. It's all. There's no trade secret at all. It was actually, it's all done, which basically I did it with, at that time, was with fish skin. A lot of things we do with now with small pieces of Kleenex, but fish skin at that time, because it has the texture of skin itself. And what it is, it's just ripped up, and when it rips up, the blood and the rubber sponge and everything underneath it is what it breaks loose, and it comes through, and this is what you actually see on the hands. And the blood, of course, dropping at the same time. Very gory.
The blood is artificial, of course.
The blood I use now, believe it or not, is Caro syrup with a little food coloring, so that when the actors have it in their mouth and that, if they swallow it, it's not going to make them sick. They're just merely using Caro syrup.
In the old days, it used to be something rather unpalatable.
Yes, well, in the black and white days, it was Hershey chocolate. And then when it got to color, there was a substance that didn't taste too well. When we used what we call the shots, where we'd put this blood in little plastic capsules, and when they'd get hit, they'd crack them, and you'd see the blood run out. Well, now it's very sophisticated. We have tubes where we take and shoot guys in the center of the forehead. You know, it's all done with little tubes and everything. And it's very interesting. It really is a very interesting end of it when the special effects department and makeup get together and they really chew somebody up.
There's a lot of blood being spilt nowadays on the screen. Do you, on the whole, regret the current trends towards violence and sex on the screen?
Well, as we were speaking earlier, I personally like to see people look their best. I think our business was based on to entertain people. The directors, a lot of your directors and producers, everything's a la natural. I know one director, I want to see the pimples. I want to see the acne in that. And I said to him, why would I spend $5 to go see, you know, on a big wide screen that I can stand on the street corner and see for nothing? I said, that's not entertainment. I said, why should you see people at their ugliest? You go into a cinema to be entertained, to get away from everyday rhetoric that you're going through. And I think that's basically what our business is. I'm still a fan to see Errol Flynn jump down in a pair of tights and cut a candle in two. I think that's what it's all about, entertainment.
That's entertainment.